Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Ed Leadership Sims webinar. My name is Brian Biddulph-Krentar. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Ed Leadership Sims. On the call as well, we have Dr. David DeYoung. He's going to be presenting today. David is an experienced teacher, coach, principal, superintendent, professor, and higher education administrator. In addition to multiple awards, he has more than 15 peer-reviewed publications with research agenda that includes simulations, school superintendency, and mentoring. And he was also elected to the executive board of the International Council of Professors in Educational Leadership. So he's a great resource and has been a great help to our company. You're going to be muted on this call, but to the top right of your screen, you'll have the opportunity to use the chat function. So feel free to enter any questions that you have in there. I'll be monitoring as David is speaking. So we'll answer any questions as they come up or at the end, depending on the question. So with that, I'll turn it over to David here. And also just a quick piece of information. We'll be recording this, so we'll send this out to you guys as well, and you can share it with any colleagues. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Can you hear me on your end? I just want to make sure I don't go too far without people being able to hear me.
I think we're good.
All right. So thanks for coming, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And we're going to talk about leveraging your title funding to improve your professional development at your school. And just a little bit about myself, a little bit more than what Brian shared, is about 4 years ago, I went to a conference in San Diego, and I stumbled across these simulations. And in just 10 minutes, I was like, oh, these are the best tool. This is the best tool out there for current and aspiring school leaders. And I have to tell you that in the last 4 years, my opinion of that has actually only grown. And I'm super excited about the simulations, and I want to share with you what I've learned. So in the last 4 years, I facilitated literally hundreds of simulations to thousands of school leaders across the US. And kind of brings me all to this webinar today. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to be talking about specifically how do you use simulations to improve your professional development. And we're also going to talk about title funding as well. Now, one of the most important things that I want to share with you today is principal pipelines and how well they are working across the country right now. So the Wallace Foundation, they continue to come out with great research that talks about aspiring leadership groups within your school or a principal pipeline within your school. And they're saying that they're feasible, meaning that when you lead them from within your school, whether you're like a leadership development director or whether you're the superintendent or whether you're a principal or some other school leader in your district, it's very possible for you to lead one of these and start one up even if you don't have one right now. Next, they're affordable. So when you are the one presenting these and you are building your pipeline from within, it does not cost much time. It just costs energy and time for you. And they're very affordable. And in fact, if I was a superintendent right now I'm a professor of educational leadership, and I'm in charge of the superintendent program, the prep program for South Dakota, I would use these simulations to within my principal pipeline in my district, and they're effective. So time and time again, these aspiring leadership groups are shown to be effective ways to encourage your teacher leaders and help create almost like a bench of leaders for your school. So when I lead these meetings, when I teach my classes, we talk about why we wanted to become a school leader. And almost always, and we all have this story that somebody tapped us on the shoulder and they said, hey, I see leadership potential in you, and I think that you should get your master's degree, or I think that you should be a school leader. Now, using these simulations to create a group of aspiring leaders within your district is just a dynamite idea. And I would highly recommend that you would consider that. So another thing, when I go to superintendent conferences in the region, one of the things that they talk about, especially when superintendents are vulnerable, they'll tell me that the culture within their admin team isn't that great. You know, in fact, I don't think I've ever heard a superintendent say, oh, the culture is just fantastic on our team, nothing's wrong with it. We can always improve the culture on our admin team. And using simulations is one of those ways that you could do that. In fact, all of these simulations, we have a bank of 30 of them for you. And you may contact me if you want to talk through which ones you should use or which ones you should facilitate first. And I'd be happy to, talk that through based on what your goals are. So if you want to improve the culture on your admin team and use just 45 minutes or an hour, whether that's once every 2 weeks, once a month, once a semester, once a year, you won't be disappointed with using a simulation to improve the culture at your school. And you can also talk about what is important to you. So we talk about this in our superintendent prep program all the time, that what a superintendent does consistently over time eventually becomes the emphasis within the district. The same is true for your principals. What a principal does consistently over time eventually becomes the emphasis within the building. And if that's the case, what are we doing over time? And leading a simulation as a school leader for your admin team or your aspiring leaders is a fantastic way to be able to communicate what is important to you and where you want the district to go. So just think of yourself sitting in front of a group of 10 aspiring leaders in your school, 1 hour on a Wednesday before school, and you're able to lead a simulation and then tie it to your district's mission, your district's vision, your district's strategic plan. It's perfect for that. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Next, a common thing that school leaders do are book studies. I did them and they were great, but I've read some research in the last couple of years that school leaders are so time bankrupt that they are either skimming something, very few times are they reading everything. And we're all probably guilty of that as well. So if I'm leading a book study and I have to read a chapter, it's like push it off to the last minute because I have more pressing issues. And so you're forcing somebody to do homework, and you're forcing somebody to give you something that they don't have, which is time. So I've also read an article that talked about how groups like Amazon, they're not having people read something before meetings anymore because nobody's reading it. So if you don't have any homework, but you bring them in for a simulation for an hour where they don't have any prep work, and you can leave them and you're not taking away something they don't have, which is time, it's great. They're going to be happy with you for that. And also, one of my colleagues from Drake University and I, we studied this, and we talked about, we studied simulations, specifically simulations from EdSims. And we came away with 4 main points that from our participants, they thought that they were highly engaging, they stimulated critical thinking, they helped them realize different perspectives, because when you're facilitating them face to face, you have an opportunity to maximize 2 people sitting in the same room being able to talk and have a conversation back and forth with each other. And also increase confidence based on their real life, because what these simulations do is they help give your principals an experience without any real world consequences. So when they have more confidence going into their job, what a gift that you can give your leaders in your district. Number 4, I'm working with one school district that is, they had an issue with documenting their documentation for their tricky situations in their district. And what they decided to do is they decided to use one simulation, go through it together, and then they allowed time for their principal, their people on their admin team to document the situation. And what they did is then they would come together and then they would read each other's documentation and they'd learn from each other and they calibrated their documentation as a district. Something that I've never heard of or anybody else doing, but I just thought it was too good of an idea not to share today if you're thinking about using these simulations. And it's cheap. It's a whole lot cheaper than sending your admin team to a conference. Now, I don't want to step on any toes because these are 3 fantastic conferences out there. And there is tremendous value in having like 2 school leaders talking with each other and building a relationship with each other outside of the school system. There's a time and a place for that. And there's also a time and a place for you to lead that as a school leader in your district and improve the professional development in your district in a way cheaper fashion, and you're the one that's actually leading it, which is it's hard to pass up. Next, how do you pay for this? So one way that you could pay for the simulations is to use your title funding. So we've had districts that have chosen this as an option for them. And if you're using Title I funds in your district, how ELS fits into Title I, you can use this to empower districts to build more robust principal pipelines in an efficient, cost-effective, and personalized way. So if we know that the Wallace Foundation is hammering home to us how important principal pipelines are, use Title I funds to improve your principal pipeline, and your whole curriculum is already set for you with these simulations. So it's a pretty sweet deal. Also, if you have Title II funds available, we have the language for you, providing ELAs with the opportunity to improve critical thinking and expand learning, filling gaps in experience with innovative virtual on-the-job training, and the simulations enable districts to think outside of a one-day professional development day. There is some research out there that the one-day professional development plans may not be as effective as just 1 hour on a regular basis. And these simulations are perfect for that. Now I say in 1 hour because that's when I've facilitated them, that's probably the average of time that it's taken. So you can get it down to 30 minutes or possibly 45 minutes, and you could go longer than an hour if you needed to. And it all depends on the window of time that you have, and it all depends on how deep you want to go with the discussion points. So maybe budget between 45 minutes and an hour per simulation. Also, a little bit more about title funding here. If you use Title IV funds, I mean, you have an increase of $100 billion to that fund, so it's going to be allocated somewhere. And if you wanted to use Title IV funds, you could use the language of it prepares teachers and administrators to face challenging situations by accelerating time through the use of simulations. So use this language, forward this webinar to the person in your district that takes care of Title I funds. I know I was a little bit spoiled as a superintendent for 8 years. I did not fill the Title I funds out. I delegated that to our finance person and it worked great. So the big thing that we wanted to get across today is we wanted to make sure that you had another idea of how to use your title funds to improve the professional development in your district. So that's all I had. It was a really quick presentation today, but I wanted to thank you for your time, and I wanted to invite Brian to come back and help us wrap this up and see if there are any questions or any further discussion that we'd like to have about this topic.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. That was great information. So as I said, I'll be happy to send out the recording and the title sheets that David showed a glimpse of. We can send those out too for your benefit. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask a question in the question box or chat, or you should have my contact information. And if you don't have it top of inbox, you'll have it later today when I send out the information. But again, happy to answer any questions that you guys have now. So I'll hang on for a few minutes and happy to answer anything. Thanks, David. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right, so I'll hang out till about 3:20 here Eastern time. If anyone has any questions, if not, thanks so much for your time today, and you'll have this information shortly.